Right, I think we will start our webinar today. Thank you everybody for joining. There is people from all around the world. It's fantastic to have so many people present with us today. We are close to 100 participants, so thank you everybody. Just some general guidelines before we start the session. I'm Emma Dumartheray. I work at BOZAR. I coordinate the BOZAR Lab, and I will be hosting this webinar. Some general guidelines before we start. So we have muted your cameras and your audio, and you can ask questions with the Q&A box and the chat box. Don't hesitate to comment, to ask questions, and we'll get back to them at the end of this session. I hope you hear us all clear, and don't hesitate really to comment in the chat box. This session is recorded, and it will be available on our BOZAR YouTube channel as of Monday. I will now leave the floor to our director and CEO, Paul Dujardin. Paul Dujardin, the floor is yours for the welcoming.
Thank you, Emma. So, dear colleagues, welcome to all of you this afternoon for a wonderful webinar on a very hot topic, art and tech, and how companies can collaborate with artists. And so, as Emma said, more than 300 people subscribed to follow this afternoon here in this online event from all over the world. And we have reached people from all continents. So thank you for your interest. And I'm glad this digital age enables us to gather all around the globe on such innovative topics. The Center for Fine Arts, BOZAR, as a cultural and multidisciplinary center, has always been, since its opening in 1928, during the Bauhaus movement, a pioneer in bridging disciplines, gathering people from all fields and to exchange, to promote, and to gather citizens around major topics in our society. Be it in artistic or political movements and societal debates. The Center for Fine Arts was namely occupied during the 1960s by the protesters, students, and artists. It's our role as a cultural institution to be the intermediate and to be a platform for citizens, but also for artists, for scientists, for designers and representatives of private companies, to meet, but also sometimes to clash or to unite in dialogue. So we are the place where artists can communicate ideas, values, opinions, and show their innovative and creative thinking, but also a place where we push discussions with all other actors of society. When you look at other pioneers examples of cultural institutions, such as ZKM, the Bach Society, Ars Electronica, these are the places where culture creates transversal programs beyond traditional frames. And this is the future of cultural institutions. In this line, BOZAR is also one of the major cultural institutions in Europe to have promoted and developed the STARTS initiative launched by the European Commission, bringing together science, technology, and the arts. The Center for Fine Arts in Brussels, in the European capital, BOZAR, acts as a regional START center. We connect people from different disciplines and we promote artists as society thinkers. This means showing out-of-the-box content with exhibitions which do not only show art, but also technological innovations. And exact science merge in artworks or design. The artist today is not only a solo maker in his atelier, it's a thinker who reaches out to other domains such as philosophy, sociology, political science and design engineer, for example, because he or she knows that science, technology, humanities, and economy are more and more important today, and that these questionings are part of their work, just as any other discipline. Of course, this strongly resonates with the Bauhaus ideas from the 1920s. And now the launch of a new European Bauhaus, promoted by the European Commission, to which BOZAR wants to show a strong support by organizing the first Bauhaus Europe event of 2020. Yes, this webinar today will feature and forward by Mrs. Ruth Reichstein from the European Commission, an introduction to Bauhaus by BOZAR LAB programmer Christophe De Jaeger, a keynote by artist Karen Palmer, and a panel discussion with 5 representatives of innovative companies. Stefan Grosjean, CEO and founder of Smappee, Alexandra Vanhuyse, co-founder of Snowball, Andrew McWilliams, founder and director of Thoughtworks Arts, Piet Haerens, founder and chief soul and strategy officer of HAEDES, and Jonathan Berte, founder and CEO of Robovision. I'm now honored to introduce to you today Ruth Reichstein, representing the European Commission today. Ruth Reichstein, you are part of the advisory board of IDEA on the new Green Deal and the new European Bauhaus. Thank you so much for being with us today and inspiring us. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you very much, BOZAR, for the invitation. I would love to just take you quickly through a short presentation, if I'm allowed to share my screen, which is not the case for now. Now it will work. So just a second. Voila. So my presentation will obviously be a boring institutional presentation, so you will have all the fancy art things for afterwards, but I still hope that I can give you with this presentation a kind of flavor of what the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has in mind when we are talking about the new European Bauhaus, which is a project that is very dear to the heart of the President and which will also remain a presidential project where she will really continue to monitor and invest herself because yeah, it's really something she is really very much into. So now it starts already because I can't move my slides, which is great. Here we go. I mean, Paul has said already some of the interesting and important features of the new European Bauhaus. So I will just mention some of them. So the idea is really to shape a movement, to explore how to live better together, also after this pandemic that glues us to our homes and doesn't allow us to move and travel as we were used to. So really to see how to shape this living together after the pandemic. It's also about making the Green Deal a positive and touchable experience. For now, the Green Deal is very technical. It's very much about renewable energy or CO2 standards. But the President is really convinced that if we want to really reach the people, we need to have an additional dimension, which is the cultural dimension. And this is what we want to do with the new European Bauhaus. Obviously, for this, we need people from a lot of different backgrounds. And therefore, BOZAR is a perfect place to talk about this initiative because we want to bring together people from different professions and backgrounds, going from designers and architects to artists, to entrepreneurs, to students, to scientists. We then changed a bit the slogan of the historical Bauhaus, form follows function, to Form Follows Planet, because of course we want this Bauhaus as well to move forward sustainable, future-oriented products, building materials, and so on. So this is also an important part. And we took the challenge to say that we want this project as well to show that the EU and the Commission are able to think out of the box, something which is not always the attribution that we get from the outside. This is more or less the timeline of the project. So we will start now in December with a design phase, and I will say some more words on it afterwards, which should last until summer next year. In parallel, we will already start the delivery phase, because of course we also have to look into how can we finance the projects, etc., which then should enable us by, let's say, September next year to really launch the first concrete calls for proposal, and then to start with 5 pilot Bauhaus projects. And then the idea is, of course, to make this grow over time, first all over Europe, and why not also globally. So before I go into the different parts and features of the Bauhaus, just one more word on the design phase. It is very important that this Bauhaus is not a top-down initiative. It's also very important for the President von der Leyen. She wants this really to be done in a co-creation process. That's why we are currently working on a kind of toolkit that we give to all institutions, but also individuals who would like to do things like BOZAR today, so conferences, workshops, brainstormings around the European Bauhaus, because together we want to shape this concept. Together we want really to see what this new European Bauhaus should be about. Because of course we have our ideas, the President has her ideas, but we really want to open up, not only in a kind of typical European Commission consultation, but really in a creative process where all kind of different people can come together. And this, as I said, will be starting very soon, if everything goes well, mid-December. So what I will do now with the remaining, I don't know, 1 minute and a half, is just to show you some examples of people who already got in touch with us, to show you how really how big the variety is and how great the potential is as well for this project, because we already have so many people who came with their ideas and who would like to participate. So the first example comes from the design world. I imagine that you know some of the players that are on the screen. And I want just to show you one example, which is Code 21, which is a design company that is working especially on sustainability. And when you look at the areas that you see here, you could also just put the political Green Deal of the European Commission, which is more or less covering exactly the same areas. So this is for us, of course, very exciting and interesting. This is also just another example from systemic design, which can be one way that we could use in this design phase, which can help us to understand the challenges, the problems, and the opportunities of this new European Bauhaus. And of course, you can imagine that for the bureaucrats in the European Commission, these kind of slides are very challenging, because normally we only work in like tables and analog texts. So the second example is architecture, just to show you some names and companies who got already in touch with us, and which is of course very nice. This is also one example of a project where a company bought an industrial park and is now transforming it into a sustainable place of living, not only with windmills and all the kind of things that you see, but also in the buildings. They give space to young startups, companies who work on sustainable design. Third, here you see BOZAR as well, is the world of culture. And of course, I didn't now take the BOZAR example, that would have been a bit boring, but the Fedora example, which is an organization from France, and they are working on the transformation of opera houses. They want to make them more sustainable. And these are the kinds of things that they are now looking into, what can be done in opera houses to make them more sustainable buildings, can also be a nice feature of the new European Bauhaus. Next one, crucial as well, is the next generation. Of course, we want to do this together with the young people of tomorrow. We want to do that together with those who will actually live tomorrow. And also just one example from 2 ladies from Germany who are architects as well, and who are traveling around Europe to see and to monitor and to feature projects around sustainability. The next one is political structures. We need them as well. Of course, we need to build these Bauhauses somewhere. Also here, just some examples who got already in touch with us. Next one is science. Obviously, we also want to connect, especially with climate scientists, because this is what this is all about as well, to fight climate change and to protect our planet. Then very interesting as well, we got a lot of private investors who got in touch, who actually told us, well, if you go for it, we are happy to build one of these Bauhauses. So great, because of course, you know that also the European money, I mean, for now, we even don't have an MFF at all for the next years, but let's hope we will get one. Even then, we will also need private investors, and also very interesting to have them on board. And last but not least, innovation. And here just one concrete example of these solar tiles, for example, that you can put directly on the roof. You don't need first your tiles and then you put the solar panels, but you can do that directly. And these would be also nice features then for the physical Bauhauses that we can just show what is possible. I skipped that one because I've already run out of time. You can, if you want, very well get in touch with us. Here's my email, because as I said, we want to get in touch and connect and get as many people on board as possible to shape this new European Bauhaus together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ruth Reichstein, for your words. I will now give the floor to my colleague, Christophe De Jaeger, artistic programmer of BOZAR LAB. He will give a bit more insight in the history of Bauhaus and how we relate to it today, building bridges between art, science, technology, and the industry.
Hello, good afternoon to all of you. We have many followers from different spheres of life, artists, industrialists, policymakers. This is really good. So I would like to give a very short introduction on the Bauhaus and some reflections related to this presidential fantastic Bauhaus statement. It triggered already many reactions on the relevance of Bauhaus models to bring today in all world industry, culture and research together. This to force a systemic change connecting the Green Deal challenges, rapid digital innovations, and of course, the underlying values we as Europe stand for. But in this short presentation, I would like to focus on the pros and contrasts that go with such a statement and that have been mentioned by different interesting writers. So let's go with the inspiration the Bauhaus gives us. It's inspiring because first of all, it stimulated interdisciplinarity and intersectoriality. The Bauhaus was an educational institution founded in 1919 by the architect Walter Gropius, bringing together artists, craftsmen, architects, painters, and sculptors to reflect on the art of building. It cannot be seen in isolation from the Industrial Revolution and the beginning of a consumer society. Cities grew rapidly, electricity, transport, and communications spread, and countless new products conquered the market. These developments raised questions about their impact on the lives of individuals. How did it feel to live in these days? Secondly, the school had a great influence on how society saw the artist and her role in society. Thanks to the Bauhaus, the 19th century image of the artist as an alienated figure was eventually put to the test. The artist was no longer seen as a person who copies classical plaster sculptures in the corridors of traditional academies, but as an individual who is fully aware of her creative potential. Also a team player, somebody who can constructively work together with people from other fields. Thirdly, the Bauhaus linked the arts and crafts to industry and technology. Gropius, the founder, was convinced that artists should relate to the new modern culture of technological media and machine production. In 1923, Gropius formulated a new approach under the motto, "Art and Technology, a New Unity," recognizing industry as one of the defining forces of the age. He described his workshops as laboratories for manufacturing models for industry, and in 1926 even founded the company Bauhaus Ltd. He introduced there a business unit run by a business manager in charge of ensuring the school's financial viability through partnerships with outside retailers and manufacturers. Of course, this was not always a very easy thing to do. But the Bauhaus has been an inspiring model for contemporary collaborations between different disciplines today. But as we all know, it's difficult to implement a Bauhaus model today because of a couple of interesting reasons. First, the goals for intersectorial collaborations are different today. We cannot unambiguously glorify scientific and technological progress, how important it might be. We have to find solutions for the problems and challenges that are caused by the industrial revolutions. The relationship between the natural environment, humans, and the technology we produce has been severely disrupted. And we need alternative narratives for the old-fashioned modernist thinking that considers nature as something as outside, as a resource to be exploited, or as a force that has to be tamed to technology. Looking for new paradigms goes further than just focusing on smart city policies. We also need a much more inclusive thinking. And in October 2020, the Van Eyck Academy in Maastricht published an open letter questioning the Eurocentric tone of such a statement. The transnational nature of climate change challenges the idea of borders and national sovereignty, showing us that the only way forward is by thinking of the world as a whole. When we initiate collaborations today, we can't do this without involving other continents or without considering the consequences of industrial developments, such as the exploitation of child labor to produce the technological devices on which our whole society depends. Thirdly, the relation between culture and economy needs to be critically, but also positively reflected upon. At the time of Bauhaus already, Johannes Itten, who was an artist and teacher at the Bauhaus, already denounced Western rationalism and technology. His subversive ideas and his interest in Spengler's book, The Decline of the West, finally led to a breakup with Gropius, which is sad. But we should also be careful today. We live in a time of manipulation capitalism and should not follow Silicon Valley models. As the writer and also director of the Institute of Network Cultures, Geert Lovink, perfectly states, we have to sabotage the startup logic and scaling up, selling out, and creating monopolies. The meaning of a new Bauhaus can't be to create a handful of European billionaires and even further increase inequality. Criticality is something Europe should claim and be proud of. So there are many things to think about, but there's still one last thing that from within BOZAR we would like to say. The Bauhaus thinking is already for a long time under discussion within the European STARTS program that unites a large ecosystem of European organizations that were already Bauhauses in themselves. We have Ars Electronica, we have Waar Society, we have ZKM Karlsruhe, and many other initiatives. And this program is successful because it creates networks of different institutions, such as companies, museums, universities, academies. And personally, I think we all hope that these Bauhaus ideas can also lead to many different open calls that will unite the existing or new interesting players. I thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Christophe. Thank you very much for your insights into Bauhaus in the 2020s. I just want to recall to all participants that you can absolutely use the Q&A box and maybe just keep the chat for comments and really ask your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll get to them at the end of the seminar. Talking about cross-sectoral collaboration, I will now leave the floor to the artist and storyteller of the future, as she calls herself, Karen Palmer. Karen Palmer will give a keynote entitled "The Future Crashes into the Present," in which she invites us to think about the future of our world, and namely the presence of AI and technology in society. And Karen namely uses AI tools in her work, actually, to create immersive experiences for the audience. One of her major work, Perception.io, was shown in BOZAR last month in the STARTS Prize 2020 exhibition. So, Karen, thank you for being with us today, and I leave you the virtual floor.
Thank you for inviting me to this very prestigious event. I'm just going to share my screen, and can everybody just check everybody can see and hear me?
Yeah, it's fine, Karen. Thank you. It's great.
This is an emergency broadcast transmission. This is not a test.
To you, so I'm just going to give you straight. I'm going to tell you a story. I know it's going to sound far-fetched.
Karen, we don't hear you very well because there's the video at the same time, I think. We have the sound.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Can you see me as well?
Yes.
Yes. Right, I don't know how I'm going to break this to you, so I'm just going to give it to you straight. I'm going to tell you a story, and I know it's going to sound far-fetched, but I am urging you to be open-minded. You see, your very future depends upon it. My name is Karen Palmer, and I'm the storyteller from the future, and I've come back to enable you to survive what is to come through the power of storytelling. But I did not come back alone. And this whole event has been created and constructed for me to connect with, of the over 100 people in this audience, 13, 14, 15 people who came back with me from the future. I kind of get the sense not everybody's taking my word for the fact that I'm from the future, so I'm going to do something highly dangerous and break protocol 7,672 million XX1 and tell you something from the future I could not possibly know unless I've come from there. So 3 main themes are going to collapse in the future. This cry to defund the police, this drive towards AI, and this transition of a smart city into surveillance city, which is going to basically connect consumerism and law enforcement and surveillance. So when you have something in the future as mundane as a driverless car, like an Uber automated car of the future, when you order that vehicle and you step into it, what will happen is that the AI will scan you, because this integrated surveillance state that we're living in. And if the AI deems that there is any outstanding violations against you, that vehicle will not be taken to a designated destination. Hell no. That vehicle will be turned into what is known as a temporary police transportation vehicle, and you'll be taken to the local police station for processing. However, that's not the worst part of this story. The worst part of this story is that sometimes the AI gets it wrong. So now I hopefully have your attention. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my work, and then you're going to understand why I was selected to come back to deliver this message for you here today. So I am the creator of Riot, the film that watches you back using artificial intelligence and facial recognition. I was inspired due to the Ferguson riots, but I created this in 2016, and it was kind of a prelude for the world that we're living in and that we will continue to live in. So with Riot, you watch the film, you're in the Riot environment, and the film watches you back, and it branches depending on your emotional response because it's monitoring you for the emotion, say calm, anger, or fear. You will step into a live site installation surrounded by ambisonic sounds, scent, haze, lighting, and your brain is basically the gaming interface. Why would I do this? You might be asking. Is that traditional media, most people, audiences, observers are a receiver of a message, a thought, an identity of which they are susceptible to. And I wanted to create something different because even though it was about being susceptible to things, now it's ramped up even more, that we are a receiver of the influence of our own perception. I'm going to show you a small extract from the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma, that expands on this a bit.
Facebook discovered that they were able to affect real-world behavior and emotions without ever triggering the user's awareness. They are completely clueless.
Perception, then, that's the center of my work. What I wanted to do with Riot is create an experience where you are not the receptor, but you are the projector. You are a projector of your subconscious onto these experiences. So it can act as a feedback loop to empower you, to make you conscious of your subconscious behavior. I was also very much inspired by parkour. Parkour is an urban inner city sport, which is really focused about going from point A to point B as efficiently as possible. But being a free runner myself, and these are films that I've made with my friends, I understand that it's not just about the spectacle of movement, it's really about the process of moving through fear and understanding that methodology. What I did is that I integrated this methodology of moving through fear in a storytelling and technology-based experience to enable people to become conscious of their subconscious behavior, to move through fear, so that they could become aware of how their emotions affect the narrative of the film, that in the exact same way their emotions affect the narrative of their life. That was 2016. In 2017, I was based in New York working with the amazing Thoughtworks Arts as part of their AI Artist in Residence. And for the next 3 years, on and off, we explored the concept of bias, going deep inside the rabbit hole of bias in technology. What would bias in technology look like? I mean, isn't that like a random concept? So what I'm going to do, rather than explain it, is that I'm going to just show you.
So watch this. Black hand, nothing. Larry, go. Black hand, nothing. Larry, go. Racist mother sinks.
Yes, you might find that kind of humorous because maybe, you know, how bad is that? I mean, it's a global pandemic, so that's quite bad, to be honest and be fair, but it's really a tap. And, you know, what is the kind of implications of something much more than a tap and hygiene? How could bias be kind of extended by design into other networks? Because what happened is that I'm assuming the developer of that system skin was a white hue. And when they tested it for the sensor to distribute the soap, they only tested it on a hue like their own. So that was the consequences of that. But there's much more serious consequences when it's moved from other sectors, say, for example, the criminal justice system. Whereas part of my residency with Thoughtworks Arts, we did extensive research into this, and we came across a system called the Compass system, which supports judges in determining the length of a criminal. And it was determined that this system was biased against Black people and people of color, basically sentencing them to a longer sentence due to the biased AI. So it was really imperative when I worked with Thoughtworks that we didn't just study and research, that we built our own networks, we built our own AI. Many artists use, say, off-the-shelf systems like IBM Watson. It was imperative and fundamental for us to build our own neural nets which is basically the brain of the AI. So we could become aware of how it was built and these issues of bias firsthand. One of the main conclusions we came to was that we needed to democratize AI. There may be something you could have heard of called the internet and email, which was with the military and government for decades before it came to us, the people. That cannot happen with AI. So we made our system that we created available open source, which means it's available and accessible for everybody, how it should be. Here's a link, feel free to take a screen grab, of the EmoPi AI open source system I created in conjunction with Thoughtworks and their amazing developers. But please, please be careful who you share this link with, because in the future, this system is the basis of the resistance. So law enforcement is not exclusive to bias and criminal justice in the UK. Also, bias in AI has also extended into education as well, which happened recently in the UK. But focusing on law enforcement, is that something which I was very much working with Thoughtworks and also Spam Lab at NYU and their behavioral psychology department with Emily Blassett to kind of go deeper into the behavioral psychology of bias and really focus on perception. We're currently living in the information age. I'm giving you a heads up that we're going to come out of that and we're going to move into the age of perception in the future. You see, the information age has only done us a great disservice of keeping us more divided and more separate. We need to have a greater sense of perception. And that's why the project that I developed last year was the commission by Cooper Hewitt was Perception.io. And this was the future of law enforcement. When you go into the system, your perspective of that of being a cop, and you're going to come into contact with a black and white character separately, and they're going to play two separate roles. And you're either going to get a black and white person who is a criminal, or a black and white person who has mental health, and you don't know. And depending on your emotional response, using the facial recognition, we also developed eye tracking as well, that's almost finished, that will determine the branching narrative of the experience. So you may end up shooting the person if you feel that they're criminal, or you may end up arresting them, or you may end up calling for backup. It really depends on your emotional response. I'm going to show you a quick snippet from the experience, and I'm going to give you a trigger warning. It has implied violence and strong language, because basically we're dealing with serious shit. And also when it branches, that's when you see a crackle, it would actually branch in real time, depending on your emotion. There is like many, many different potential narratives.
Bienvenidos, ciudadano.
Welcome, valued citizen, to the future of law enforcement. Perception.io. Your future needs you today.
Yo, press the button.
Requesting additional support. We have a 1031, shots fired, I repeat, shots fired. Dispatch is requesting nearest officers at 39th and 3rd Ave. Suspect is armed and dangerous.
Sir, there's been a robbery in the neighborhood and you fit the description. I need your hands up.
What the fuck do you want, man?
Sir,
what the fuck do you want?
Down. Sir, do you have a piece of ID with you? Sir, I need to see your ID.
What the fuck do you want, man?
Back up! Back up!
What do you want? What do you want?
Sir, back up! Ma'am, stay on a minute! Back up and calm down, sir. Okay? Sir, what are you doing here?
You white motherfuckers always fucking with us.
Back up and calm down.
Yeah. So I created this experience for people potentially to become aware of their own bias. This is not a judgment. This is a space that an artist has created using science and technology for self-reflection. When you do the experience, you can reflect on yourself. If you maybe shot the black person or arrested the black person and found out that they had mental health issues, if that was something which you are biased about, or maybe you're not. This is not a judgment space. This was a big part of the behavioral psychology. It was just to provoke self-reflection. This brings me to present day, 2020. And my current project in development with the BFI is Consensus Gentium, which is Latin, which many of you may know because you're quite smart on this call, is if everybody believes it must be true, And consensus gentium is a form of an perception expander. So I'm working with people who are at the cutting edge of change. So one of the many people organizations is Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, who are actually subpoenaing the LAPD, their algorithms that they use in their policing to surveil the community. They're questioning how they're building their data sets. They took them to court and they won. People who are challenging the system and the status quo with an understanding of technology. Other things I'm exploring in my work is this kind of move towards a curtailment of our digital civil rights, and this kind of an erosion, exponential like a movement towards surveillance. And as I said, in the future, the smart cities are going to transition into surveillance cities. To create this, I created an initiative called Hack the Future Labs at the intersection of art, tech, science, social justice, which was a series of working with international experts such as Bo Lotto, who's a neuroscientist, Ruha Benjamin, who's a professor from Stanford looking at bias, Fika, who's a data researcher, Forrest, who's an elite parkour trainer, to really hack the future as an action and think tank to change the world. So some of the thoughts that came out of this when we were in the Netherlands this summer was Fika talking about, well, when you're talking of defunding the police, are you talking about Silicon Valley? Because they are very much involved in police at the moment. Christian Williams, the anarchist author, he spoke about the enemy in blue, and he discussed the origins of the police force in America. And I'm not sure if you know, I didn't know, the origins of the police force was slave patrols. The officers were overseers sent out from the plantation. So when you have that context, and then you see what's happening in America at the moment, you have this realization that, what I do, that it's not that the system is broken. Based upon the origins of what it was built, the system is working by design. We worked with Kambale, a techno activist in the Congo, Katie, an activist in Hong Kong. I needed a global perspective from experts, from people who was also on the ground, to get insights to how we could actually hack the future. Also from a spiritual context and the parkour aspect. So with the parkour, we created a small set parkour session where we brought people who've never done parkouring before to take them through the process with Forrest, this elite parkour trainer, to move through fear, but through the body. And then we took them back to the lab to do an emotional decompression. And there was a young lady called Maya, who's a performer, called May, sorry, who's a performer. And she came and did the session, and she was able to move through fear. And when we went back to the lab, she got very emotional, talking about how what she learned in the session was translatable to herself, because she's very concerned about her family who are currently in Hong Kong at the moment. And that what she learned about moving through fear is something that she can use in her life and share with her family. So this is absolutely pivotal to the work I'm currently creating with the Consensus Gentium. So the Consensus Gentium, my objectives of it are to enable people to move through fear, to become conscious of their subconscious behavior, to expand their perception, and then crucially, activate agency in them at a time where people are feeling helpless and hopeless. This is the objective of this storytelling experience, and the prototype will be out early in the spring next year. So just to conclude, the message that I have for these 15 people who are listening, who came back with me, the stories, the films, the movies, the TV I watched as a child have shaped the world in which I live in now. That's why it's called programming. And the stories which we tell ourselves and each other are going to create the world of today and tomorrow. So you need to be deliberate and intentional in the stories that you do tell yourself and each other. My name is Karen Palmer, and I'm the storyteller from the future. And I've come back to enable you to survive what is to come through the power of storytelling. But I did not come back alone. And for those 15 people, I'm hoping that this talk has given you some semblance of recollection that you have come back. And what I would love you, implore you, beg you to do now is try to remember what it is you came back to do, because your future needs you today. Thank you.
Fascinating keynote. Thank you so much. I mean, your work is truly an eye-opening. I've experienced the Perception IO work in BOZAR, and it's really interesting. I hope our audience here can also experience some of your work soon. We're actually 138 people following this webinar, so thank you so much for being here with us today. I hope there's no echo now. I've heard there was a bit of echo when I was speaking, so I hope it's good now. Thank you so much, Karen. And actually, Karen is staying with us until the Q&A session. So do not hesitate to ask your questions about her work and her ideas in the Q&A box. Please keep the chat for comments and remarks, and really use the Q&A box for actual questions for the speakers. I will now actually introduce Geraint Wiggins, who will be moderating the panel discussion that we organized today. The panel discussion will last for around 30 minutes, and then we will leave 30 minutes for the Q&A and for the speakers to answer all of your questions. So thank you for being with us today, and Geraint, I leave you the floor.
Thank you, Emma. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Geraint Wiggins. I'm Professor of Computational Creativity at the Vrije Universiteit Brussels. I'm honoured to be moderating this debate, and I'm grateful to my colleagues at BOZAR and Gluon for inviting me. We live in a time of technological change that is maybe faster, more sustained, and less sustainable than at any time in human history. It's the aim of many artists to reflect on and question those developments. It's the aim of corporations, large and small, to monetize them. Technology corporations, in particular, are leading a fundamental change in the nature of humanity. Right now, we, as humans, are becoming symbiotic with our smartphones, and symbiosis entails dependence. As these devices become more intelligent, and as we cede progressively more of our lives to them, they become more powerful and potentially more dangerous. Furthermore, they give corporations, entities with quasi-human rights but without quasi-human conscience, access to our most personal lives. What is more, these same corporations and we as individuals are driving change in our environment faster than at any time in human history. In the 20th century, the Bauhaus movement was the route through which artists were able to influence the path of technology. Today, we are looking for a 21st century successor to Bauhaus to lead us through the maze of intelligent technology into a greener and more responsible future. The challenge posed by the Green New Deal is to ask how we and our corporations can be made more aware of our impact on the planet and how to use technology to take more responsibility for it. Can a new Bauhaus find ways for artists to illuminate the effects of technology on us all and to help us reflect on our own uses of it? Can this approach optimize and moderate the effects of technology on us and on our world? The question I would like us to begin with is this. Our keynote speaker has suggested that we, as individuals and as a species, are colliding with the future.
That's really wrong.
How then can a new Bauhaus channel the energy of that collision away from destruction and into safe, sustainable progress? I'm delighted to welcome our 5 speakers this afternoon, and I'm going to invite them now to introduce themselves one by one and to briefly, in about 5 minutes, respond to that general question. After that, we'll go directly to audience questions. So please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A, not into the chat, please, as we proceed with the opening statements. If your question is meant for a particular speaker, please do mention who that person is. We have a very large audience and we have limited time, so I'm going to apologize in advance to those questioners whose questions we are unable to address. I'd like to begin then by inviting Stefan Grosjean from Smappee in Belgium to present his 5-minute introduction and statement.
So, hello everybody, and I'm really honored to be part of this. My name is Stefan Grosjean. I'm actually an entrepreneur busy with technology, founder of, amongst others, Smappee, which is a company building solutions, products for homeowners to provide them insights in how they use energy consumption, their energy in the homes. And we have seen that by using creativity to simply show how the energy is consumed, and to use artificial intelligence like Shazam did when recognizing the melody. We recognize out of your total consumption the different appliances that you use in your home, and so we could, by using technology, provide insights to people to answer the question, actually, where is that energy consumption going to? And by such, they change behavior and save 12% energy. So this is what passions me, using technology to work on a bigger, more noble ambition, which is helping our climate. If we could help people to really reduce the consumption just by behavior change by 12%, and if with the insights they go further, they replace their lights, they replace the old fridge, they achieve 40–45% energy reduction. Imagine we could just by apps, by visualizing, by using creativity to make it simple, because companies do it, but they require energy manager, educated people. So using something emotional that is easy to understand can achieve a very big goal, which is good for us all. That is actually what we try to do, to change the world. And my philosophy in general is based on Jules Verne, the creative mind as well, that 200 years ago wanted to go to the moon with his novel, or 20,000 Miles Under the Sea. At that time, that was not possible, but now it is. So he was a visionary, and I think we need to be a visionary like him to change the world. Steve Jobs was, to me as well, an artist. Technologists, designers are as well artists. Maybe we should try to speak more the emotional language of an artist to be inspired. And what I try to do in my company as well is to live what Jules Verne said, which was tout ce qui s'est fait de beau et de grand en ce monde, c'est réalisé au nom d'espérance exagérée. So in English it would be that all beautiful and great things in this world have been conceived, created, realized in the name of exaggerated hope. And I believe that this Bauhaus project should be this exaggerated hope. We have to really put our ambition very high. Climate needs it. We are very close to the tipping points, which is a point of no return. So we have to be very ambitious and creative, and think like 200 years ago with Jules Verne, of things of the future that will be possible. Yeah, so yeah, that's what I try to do in the company, to change the minds of the people, that technologists are sometimes people that are not emotional or too technical, and I try to get that fun. The way we innovate is based on agile processes, on making the minimal viable product, on not trying to make just a product to make a product. We try to understand the market, what the requirements are, what is failing in a product that would help our planet, the energy transition, and we try to make it better. We bring it to the market. We look at what's better and what is still not good enough. And as a cyclist, we continuously try to improve to achieve our goal. That's, I think, how companies work today, should work today, be ambitious, have that noble goal, which in my case is about the climate, helping the energy transition. As we all know, the wind and the sun is something we cannot turn on when we need more energy. And the big challenge when we transition to that is that our homes will have to be smarter, will have to consume energy when there is energy, and to consume less energy when there is not. So apart from the insights that we provide that saves and changes the behavior, we also have solutions that communicate between homes to say, hey, I have too much solar energy I'm producing. What are you doing? Ah, your car is plugged in. Well, I will charge your car. So local energy communities, these things are coming. The world is changing a lot, and we have to push it forward. We have to open our minds. Yeah, but it's possible. I could go on for longer, but I think that's the first contribution I wanted to make.
Thank you very much, Stefan. So then we're going to move straight on through these statements. Where there will be the opportunity to ask questions to Stefan afterwards, and I can see there are some questions coming in. So those will be addressed later on. If you're not getting an answer immediately, please don't worry. So I'd like to move on to Alexandra Vanhuyse from Snowball as our next presenter.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. I'm Alexandra Vanhuyse, and I'm the co-founder of Snowball. Snowball is a living lab for clean technology, and we research and develop new solutions in the field of clean tech. So we test and we optimize prototypes, and we do that with a various set of partners. We work with corporates, with entrepreneurs, with startups, with industry groups, lobby groups, with academia. And as such, we try to help clean tech companies to grow and to accelerate the adoption of clean technology. Now, coming back to the question of Geraint and linking to Karen's talk earlier, I was walking in Ghent this morning, my hometown, and I came across this very interesting quote that I want to share with you. It's on my phone. It isn't the best quality, but I hope you can see it. So it's a quote. It's on the Korenmarkt or the Koter in Ghent, and it says, "Tomorrow belongs to those who can hear it coming." It's a quote by David Bowie, who is an amazing artist. But with that, I want to link to the question: how can we channel the energy, and how can we ensure that the new Bauhaus creates or realizes its ambition? So I really like the concept of toolboxes. People who are entrepreneurs, people who are artists, they have their toolbox is their main priority or their main asset. And if you look at, for instance, what EU Commissioner Šefčovič said recently, so we have the toolbox of strategic foresight at the European Commission. So the strategic foresight used as a compass for Europe's resilience to create a more resilient Europe, where we anticipate what is coming towards us, where we explore, and where we act in a collaborative manner. And I think the transdisciplinary approach is essential and crucial in realizing the ambitions of the Green Deal, because they're so vast and they are so impactful. It's really about systemic change, and we need to do that with the society as a whole. So that is my advice or my recommendation on how we can make the new Bauhaus, or how we can realize the new Bauhaus. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll move straight on to allow time later for discussion to Andrew McWilliams from Thoughtworks. Andrew.
Hi, thanks, Geraint. Yeah, as was just said, my name is Andrew McWilliams. I'm a director of Thoughtworks Arts. And thanks for that question. How do we channel this energy towards sustainable progress? I think that that's a brilliant question. And like many others, I think that's something, many others on this call, that's something that I think about a lot. I think about and I work on every day. And that's what Thoughtworks Arts does every day. And I think that, you know, a big part of the answer to that, it's all about how you bring people together in new and different ways to imagine and create new futures, to bring new futures into focus and to drive towards them. Karen mentioned our collaboration in her talk with Thoughtworks Arts. We worked with Karen on a project which was exhibited at Cooper Hewitt Museum and Ars Electronica and received STARTS Prize Honorable Mention. So we connected with Karen quite strongly. So what is Thoughtworks Arts? Thoughtworks Arts is a global research laboratory, and we incubate independent artists in collaboration with the employees of a global technology company called Thoughtworks, and with a broader global network of partners. And we work every day to bring this network together of the employees of the company and the people in our partner network globally, and to bring artists in and position them in the driving seat to generate new ideas. And so what we do with artists is that we explore the impact of emerging technologies on industry, culture, and society. So Thoughtworks is a tech company with more than 7,000 employees working from 43 different offices in 14 different countries around the globe. And all of these employees, tech industry employees, are dealing with software design, data analysis, system architectures, machine learning, all kinds of, you know, on the ground technology implementation details at scale. So that's what they do as a day job every day. And what Thoughtworks Arts does, which is a program that runs as part of Thoughtworks, is it makes this company into a resource for artists, right? So we run these structured residencies. And so I and my collaborators within the company personally run these structured residencies. They're often for 16 weeks. As Karen mentioned, we worked there for several years. We have Art to Hack co-creation programs over weekends. So we have these different shapes of programs that we operate, but they're all designed to help artists to work with these international teams and to produce and share these critiques, these worldviews that are themselves often technical innovations because they're focused on making with tech. That's what the teams are capable of doing. We've found ourselves looking at issues like cyborgism and transhumanism, DNA and data, biometrics and VR, emotion and AI. That's, for example, what we worked with Karen, and bias and AI, movement and industrial robotics. Currently, we're working on synthetic media and deepfakes, very crucial issue right now. And that's just to name a few. So you get the sense that we work with this very broad intersection of ways that artists can look at how tech impacts society and the way that technologists in this global company can participate and support and collaborate with artists. One of the things that makes Thoughtworks Arts so unique is the way we forefront artists, and we specifically do that because we want to be challenged and we want to, there are a lot of tech industry employees who appreciate these challenges and who believe in these crucial problems themselves, and they really appreciate the opportunity to work with artists to deal with these challenges. So, you know, this idea goes even further. It manifests to the extent that Thoughtworks Arts, the program itself, is run by artists. I myself have been a practicing artist during many years, and we do this via external partnerships as well. We work with the curator and artist Ellen Perlman, who helps to set direction and is co-director of the Thoughtworks Arts program. So I think my key point with all of this is that if you bring three important ingredients together, you can really produce powerful work, which helps to drive the way that we see these issues facing technology and society. One is having access and creating a network of a pool of people with deep hands-on technology expertise. So people who have the ability to make and who have the on-the-ground experience of how the technology is implemented. The second ingredient is artists who are asking these deep investigative questions and building these images and these worldviews for us to investigate and to explore and to exhibit. And then third, and this is what we really try to do with Thoughtworks Arts, is we bring those two groups of people together and then produce an incubation experience in which the artists lead the way and in which the teams are oriented around making as a form of research, as a form of discovery. Especially on emerging technologies, this is how you learn a lot about what the technologies really mean. So, you know, that's a sort of general introduction to Thoughtworks Arts. There's one other thing I want to mention since we're here today talking about sustainability and technology. And that's that I'm also a founding member of the global initiative called climateaction.tech. And that's another example of how you can bring communities together, especially collaborations with the tech industry, to deal with societal issues. In this case, it's specifically focused on climate change. It's an online meeting and project space for people in the tech industry to find each other and to collaborate on projects intersecting the tech industry and the climate crisis. We have 3,000 members at this point, very high participation across the EU, mostly people in the tech industry, but it's also people in sustainability who deal with tech, collaborating together. Also a lot of people in the USA and a lot of global participation. Publicly right now, they're running salons, TED Talks, and they've just started a new publication called Brunch in collaboration with Climate Kick. Some of you may be aware of Climate Kick. It's a body of the European Union. So these are just lots of ways that, you know, bringing communities together, and especially the tech industry and the role that people in the tech industry can play to help to build these solutions and build these worldviews of places we can go. And I think, you know, just one other thing, as a member of the tech industry myself, I just know that there's a lot of employees in the industry who relish the opportunity to work on these difficult issues. And sometimes it's a matter of going directly to the employees, not necessarily directly to the companies. And sometimes the companies come in as part of that and they become part of the partnerships. But often it's about tapping the energy of employees in the tech industry who want to collaborate on these leading projects. So with that, I'll hand it back over. Thank you, Geraint.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Okay, we're going to move swiftly on. The questions are coming in, that's great, and I'm saving them up for later. Our next speaker is Piet Haerens from HAEDES or HAEDES. I'm not sure how to pronounce the name of your company, Piet.
Yeah, I'm from.
Over to you.
Yeah, I'm from HAEDES. My name is Piet Haerens. My background is in coastal engineering, but actually founder and chief soul and strategy officer of HAEDES. For me, soul in that title is quite important. I will come back on that later. And I'm with HAEDES, and we are committed, let's say, to combine our engineering and soul. For us, imagination, yeah, that comes first, while the creativity with the help of science and technology is the key to successful solutions. And those solutions should be in support of nature. And that's quite important for us. We are working a lot in nature environment. We are working at coastal areas, at rivers. They are at a huge pressure of the climate change. But to overcome those challenges, in our opinion, we need a different view of us human beings in nature. Our view on nature is completely wrong, and we are part of nature. And mainly in the engineering world, still today, people think a lot that by engineering, we can shape nature, we can conquer nature, we can protect ourselves from nature. And on the contrary, we have to find solutions where we can live together with nature in a resilient way. And that's quite important for us in coastal engineering, but also in other engineering aspects. And in a lot of the technology solutions we see today, I see a lack of systemic, holistic, interconnected approach. Everything is interconnected. We should be aware of that. And there were smart guys before us that already told about that. Einstein also mentioned that already a long time ago. So in what we do, what we want to do with HAEDES, we want to think integrated. We want to think systemic. And in our solutions, we also want to bring in always solutions that bring solutions for biodiversity. I'm not exaggerating when I'm telling that climate change is not the biggest problem, but it's biodiversity and the killing of living animals, living creatures on Earth is a bigger problem. And by technology, we will not save our planet. So my message is that we definitely need a different viewpoint on nature. And that's quite important. If I went through the Green Deal, for me, it was also quite disappointing. It doesn't inspire. It gives the illusion that technology is the key for a prosperous future. We are going to copy the Industrial Revolution again, because we will focus on technology, and we have a mechanistic view of the world, which is still dominant. Is that the correct one? I don't think so. For me, the deal is also driven by competition. There are phrases like we strive to be the first climate neutral continent, but to become leaders, it's a growth strategy, while growth is for me the strategy of a cancer cell. Is that what we need? I miss nature in the Green Deal. And that's also, another aspect for me is that the Green Deal is quite hooked on to the neoliberalism. It's focused on doing the same but different, and building on the fetish of consumption of goods. And therefore we need a different way of living. We have to think on how can we live regenerative to nature, regenerative to our environment. And already today we've seen signs that people are taking that up. And on the contrary, we also see signs that technology has quite negative effects on us as human beings. So for me, in the Green Deal, I miss a lot of words or actions related to thinking regenerative, thinking holistic, systemic, but also passion, soul, intuition, arts. Yeah, I want to live in another world, not in a technological world, but in a world where there is space for nature, where there is space for passion, for soul, for intuition. And that's what we try to do with HAEDES. In our company, although we are working on engineering, we give room to people to express their passion, to work with intuition. As engineers, I can tell it's difficult because we are so used to use the left brain or the left part of the brain. But if you start using and combining your engineering knowledge with the right brain thinking, and including indeed art, philosophy, and nature, you will find different solutions. And that's what we are working on.
Thank you very much. It's good to hear some questioning of the premise that we're here to discuss. I see that people are raising their hands on the chat window in the participants window, and also typing questions into the chat window. Please, can I invite you to type questions into the Q&A system, please, so that we can manage them properly for later on. So Piet, thank you very much for your presentation. And we're going to go on now to our last statement, which is from Jonathan Berte from Robovision.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Berte. I'm the CEO of Robovision. And at Robovision, our mission is to democratize AI. We are a company, we're not a non-for-profit organization, so we do that with the incentive of a company. We are a machine that also has to grow and make money. We want to be transparent and open in that. And we do that in 4 different verticals, in agriculture, smart cities, manufacturing, and healthcare. And our goal is to make AI accessible to all, to build an AI exchange so people can easily build AI models. And together, and that's my own view, it's not the view of the company, to build a society 2.0. And in this society, I compare it very often with the growth of Linux, the open source operating system. I think society needs the same kind of drive, openness, and energy that Linus Torvalds and his team have brought Linux to us. So I sincerely hope that the foundations of this Society 2.0 can be transparency, can be encryption, so privacy and everything is actually built into the backbones of this new society. It will be a digital society. And I think it's part of the democratization waves that have come with all these technological inventions. The steam invention, the invention of the steam engine has brought a lot of people around these typical urban centers. Electricity has actually also been parallelized by the suffragette movement because women had more liberty in their households. The transistor led to more openness in information, radio, television. And I think the internet has been a marvel for open education. People in Pakistan, India, in poor countries are able to learn a lot of things nowadays. And I think the next iteration of our society is an open expert exchange. And we want to build that together with academia, a sort of app store, but then for virtual experts, because we want to make sure that somebody can have the best radiologist, somebody can have the best life coach. It will be a virtual life coach in the future because we're just with too many people. I'm a believer in technology. I've heard a lot of people being very negative about technology. I mean, we're building these kind of tools also to help the police and to help society, but we do that with good karma, and it's better that we in Europe build it than that we have to buy it from Chinese companies. We're also working on this tap of the future. I was really confronted by the story of Karen Palmer, because that's exactly what we will do in the coming year, is to build the tap of the future, and this message was really accepted. We will take good care of anti-bias systems and so on, and we will invite academia to help us building these systems. We have a worldwide footprint. We are in almost every industrial nation in the world with our software. So we have a huge responsibility towards society. I'm a little bit like, I feel a little bit, it's not particularly the right expression, like the elephant in the room here, because I mean, the things that were mentioned are very much in our business model, in the sense that we are confronted with governments asking us to make surveillance tools, and we have this ethical commission in our company that has to review all of these projects before we do them. So I'm very open to accept questions about that. Some other things I wanted to say maybe is that surveillance is not always bad. We're, for instance, also building the surgical, the surgery exam of the future. Right now, surgeons, if they have to do an exam, they have to be reviewed by a commission of fellow surgeons, which is often politicized because they know that they have to work also in groups among other surgeons. And I think some of these tooling to really look at reality can really help people, as long as people like Linus Torvalds and good karma people make sure that this digital society will not become a big brother like in 1984. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. So questions are coming in. We have a diverse range of thoughts to address here, and a diverse range of questions are being asked about them. I think I'm going to start off with a rather general one. This is from Anita Dirks. So the question is this: hi, as we're evolving towards a more and more robotized world, how can empathy and AI coexist and still gain confidence of humans? This question was originally directed towards Karen, but I think it's a really interesting question. It ties in to the point that was just made, which is AI and these technologies are tools which we can use. The issue is how we use them. And I think Anita's question kind of taps in nicely to this, and to the general point that I raised earlier about responsibility, to which Pete referred and has been referred to throughout. So I would like to invite Karen, if I may, first to respond to that question. And then the other speakers, if they would like to respond, perhaps they could raise a hand so that I can see what's going on. You raise your hand by going to the chat window, sorry, the participants window, and pressing the appropriate button.
Hi, shall I start
Karen.
answering? Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I've been looking at, and thank you for your question, Anita. I've been looking at it for like 10 minutes. Like, I could give you such a long answer. I'm going to answer it in a really weird way that I don't think, I'm not really an empathy chick. Like, I don't feel that this is the #1 priority. I feel I'm more about moving through fear, because fear seems to be, to me, the most motivating, one of the most powerful motivating human kind of emotions. And that is what I'm seeing motivating, particularly what's happening in America at the moment and all over the world, actually. And that it's, to me, it's more about moving through fear, because to me, empathy is quite a passive emotion. This is my personal opinion. And that fear is about more taking accountability. But to be more, to kind of answer your question, yes, we are moving to more and more roboticized world. How can empathy and AI coexist and still gain the confidence of humans? Because I'm coming from this so differently, I'm not looking at how to make this perfect kind of human and in the loop with the AI. I'm looking at how to use AI to kind of make us more human. So it's really hard for me to directly answer that question. I think I'm really going to be horrible and throw it to Andy or somebody, because that's not how I'm not seeing AI as something which should be in that way. Like, how can we make AI more human, make it more empathetic? I know I'm just looking at how can we use it to make us more the best humans we possibly can. That's kind of my #1 concern with it.
Yeah, and I'm happy to jump in. Thanks, Karen.
Andrew, could I ask you to just pause a second? Stefan got in there first, and this gives you a chance to think a little bit more about what you'd like to say. Stefan. You need to unmute, yes.
I think we should be positive about technology and things like AI. I gave the example of Shazam, and the way that by using this technology, we can find the fingerprints of appliances, and at the end, this contributes to people understanding how they consume energy, where it goes to, and at the end, a stupid old mechanical electricity meter that nobody looks at, maybe once a year to read the meter and fill it in to provide it to the utility company. That's not human, but a new kind of energy meter with AI technology that helps people understand, in a way talks to them by saying, it's the lights that consume so much energy, it's this, I think is very human. Yeah, so to me, it goes perfectly hand in hand.
Thank you very much. Okay, Andrew.
And thanks, Karen, for moderating. Yeah, I think I'll answer the question as I understand it, which is the question implies that empathy and an AI future have compatibility issues, and I think that's there's some roads you can travel with that, but I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding around emerging technologies, especially AIs, as to the role they'll play, and that's why it's important that things like storytelling and things like collaborations between artists and technologists can help to explore and clarify some of these areas. For example, the fact that we've been working on these issues of emotion and AI, there are ways that emotion links to AI, for example, the idea of AIs as being readers of emotion is kind of debunked. It's something that we've learned doesn't make sense. And I think that you can look at the AIs that do things like facial expression recognition, which is a proxy for emotion. And that techniques around that space can give outcomes, but what they're really doing, the AIs that look at facial expression recognition, for example, are mimicking human behaviors. And so given that they're mimicking human behaviors, they're not really eating into emotional space. They're replicating and increasing the scale and the speed at which human decisions can be made. So humans still own empathy and other emotions. And I think that's important to clarify. I think it's important for artists to explore the potential futures of these things, because right now people are mistakenly applying these technologies on the basis of, in some cases, debunked and pseudoscience. And so it's important for these narratives to emerge that can then lead to these conversations, that can then lead to a better societal understanding of these technologies. And I think that's the way you keep the domains separate going forward. So I hope that helps.
Can I just add one thing to what Stefan said, just 30 seconds, is that, I know you say it should be, Stefan said about being excited about AI. Technology is not inherently good or bad, it just depends whose hands it in and what objective they had. And I am advocating that it moves out of the small bubble of people whose hands it's in, and it goes to more the masses, because we will have a different agenda and objective in how those things are being used. And that makes me super excited.
Thank you. So I'm going to move on to a slightly different kind of question now, which is really directed to the entrepreneurs in our panel. I'm not sure if Karen sees herself as an entrepreneur or not. You do. Okay, so the question comes from Christopher Littlefair. Do you see the new Bauhaus project having an influence on industry on a more conceptual level or on a practical level? Is it a project to simulate critical intellectual design thinking, or do you envisage closer, more applied links to industry? And we're having silence. So I'm seeing, I mean, we've heard views expressed on this. Do any of our panelists wish to respond to that question?
Yes, Geraint, perhaps I will address it. So at Snowball, what we do is we are, if you look at technology readiness levels, we typically are active in TRL levels 4 to 7, which is in practical terms, academia do theoretical research. From that research, they create a concept or a product or a service that might be in the future commercialized, which is TRL 9. But before it goes to TRL 9, it needs to be tested in a contained environment first, and then in a small scale real environment. And then it needs to be mixed and matched with other technologies before it goes to commercialization. So Snowball is active in those specific phases in TRL 5 to 7, which is where we work with academia and with entrepreneurs, with corporates and so on. So if you ask me how we would combine design and artists and culture in our business, if you are prototyping, you are constantly looking at different aspects, different elements. You need to reiterate several times what you think would have worked and does not work. You need to change your concept. You need to change all angles of what you do. So for us, working with that specific discipline or that specific industry is something that is structural and that is systematic. So it's both practical and intellectual, I would say, conceptual.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. Would any other of the speakers like to respond? Okay, so let's move on then to a further question. I note it's now 17:30 in our time zone, 5:30. And in principle, that should be the end. However, I've been told that we have another 10 minutes for our discussion. So please keep those questions coming. I'm going to ask a slightly different question now to our panelists, which is to do with the use of AI to reach people. As this comes from Thomas de Jaeger, and he's wondering if using new technologies such as AI in museums, and I'm going to broaden this out slightly from museums to other means of communication, and then to a broader kind of building of society around something like the Green New Deal. So in other words, to bring people in to a movement. Thomas is asking essentially, what methods do we have for reaching people who are not reached by classical methods of art and so on? So in other words, using the ideas of something like a Bauhaus to take arts, to take communications out there, what technology can we use to do this in new and exciting ways to reach new people?
I think an important part of this is being a reflection. So for instance, if you need to reach young people and make them aware about surveillance, about those kind of things, it can be part of an artist work in a museum. So you can, for instance, leave your profile, your Instagram profile at the entrance, and it will scan your profile. It will confront you with the fact that it knows a lot about you. I think interactive installations are very important for young people because they have this need to interact, to reflect themselves, and they have their Instagram, TikTok ecosystem. So I'm very much in favor of such new type of installations that confront young people with how they can be tracked online, because that's really something. If you look at TikTok and other ventures, of course, they're not non-for-profit organizations, and they really mine all this data of young people. I think it's really something that they shall be aware of. We all remember the Holocaust, where, for instance, in Holland, each person had inscribed in the log files of the state what type of ritual they wanted if they would die for good reasons. If somebody had no family, they would know that he or she was a Jew. But of course, when the Germans arrived, they just took all these books and they knew exactly who to prosecute. And Holland was, the Netherlands was. I mean, the prosecution was very brutal because of all this information being there. I think we shall be aware of such events in the future and make young people aware about the fact that they're just helping to mine big organizations and make money on them.
Thank you very much. This is a very important point indeed. So we have now, I have two comments coming in. First of all, from Alexandra.
Yes, hi, thanks. So I wanted to add on that about AI and reaching people, because at Snowball we have the same, although AI is not at the core of what we do, but we work, what we do is highly technological, and we work predominantly with highly skilled people as well. We work with engineers, with data scientists, with PhD fellows and so on. So if we, as one of our missions or part of our mission at Snowball is that we want to accelerate the adoption of clean technology. And for that, we need the end consumer to engage with us, to understand what we're doing, to know where we're going and so on. So in the last year, we acted as a partner for Gluon in the Regional STARTS Project 1. And we worked on the challenge, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, on the challenge number 11 on sustainable cities and communities. And our request or our ambition in the collaboration with Gluon working on sustainable cities and communities was, how can we bring the message of clean technology towards a broad community? How can we engage people that we would not typically reach to our normal audience? How can we engage with them, and how can we invite them to be part of what we're trying to achieve? So we had an artist in residence with us, a Brussels-based artist, Piet Haerens, who created a sculptural installation. The basic concept is a basketball goal. It's playing basketball, but it's the installation has many aspects, and it's fueled by renewable energy. And the idea is that through engaging with other communities that would not be typically ours, basketball communities, young people, people who are active in a specific subculture, we can reach them and we can bring a message through gameplay and through that specific approach.
Thank you very much. I see that Stefan also has something to add. Karen, I'll come to you afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a confronting idea that I want to just launch here. I believe actually that the process of in the brains of an artist is the same as what artificial intelligence algorithms do. It's a neural network. It's looking at yeah, common things, similarities, and when a Picasso meets another artist, he gets influenced. When a Google AI search robot is looking for keywords and it sees new keywords, it will change its response. And in my opinion, it is very similar, and there are AI softwares that you feed with artists' works, and if you tell them, the softwares, hey, can you create a new Picasso? Actually, you see a Picasso-like thing that could have been created by. So I believe that AI and what people do think is, yeah, at the end, merging and getting the same. So maybe in museums, because that was a bit the question, what could we do with AI? Maybe we should have half of the space exposed or given to robots and software that bring those new different ideas, but to comfort or reconfort artists and others, the output of AI will only be so good as the input it will get from what it trains. And I still believe that will be from the human input. So we shouldn't fear. We should see AI as contributing or helping.
That's not true. And it's not true. Sorry to interrupt you, but if you look at the AlphaGo, did somebody see the AlphaGo documentary? Many of you probably saw it. But at some point, the grandmaster, the Korean grandmaster, Lee Sedol, he in the beginning, he was really very self-conscious and very confident that he would win the game. But at some point, he made a very philosophical remark. He said, I've seen true beauty. No human mind would think of such a innovative and creative step. And he just stopped playing Go as a matter of, as a statement almost. So it is not true that AI is only as good as the information it's fed. AI is much more than that. And I truly believe that at some point in our lifetime, AI will be much smarter than humans, and we will have to live with that. And that is the basic philosophical question. And the next decades, we should really prepare for that event.
This is certainly something we have to do. We're going to have to close soon, but Karen had something to say earlier on, so I'd like to go back to Karen.
But I don't know about I don't know about like half the space is the AI and half the space is the artist, and now Jonathan's like, well, just make the whole space the AI. So I'm coming from a different perspective. But that's
I'm not sure Jonathan said that, but anyway.
That's my feedback a little bit on the show. There was too few interaction. People were just posing their opinions, and I really wanted to have this kind of energy released with Karen, for instance, because I'm your antipode. I mean, I'm the evil if you look at your video, and I wanted to explain myself, but I could not explain myself in the show.
Yeah.
But we should let Karen say what she wanted to say.
Well, yeah, because it's going to go off somewhere really interesting. But my comment, because when I was looking at that question, I was looking at it for a while, because I don't think of the networks first. I think of the content, and to connect with people, to me, it's about representation and them seeing themselves in what I'm doing, as opposed to focusing on how to connect with them through a digital network. If I can connect with them spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, they're going to find me somehow. And when I was first showing my work at the V&A in London, some of my audience came in and I was like, did you find it okay? They're like, yeah. As we walked towards the information desk, we went to ask where your exhibition was, and the person behind the desk said, oh, you've come to see the Parkour Interactive? They go, yeah. And they looked down, they had trainers on, they were like urban youths. It's like those people don't come into those museums, right? So it's about content, about representation, and my audience will find me. However I'm using whatever digital network, whatever the latest thing is, that's just a bonus. It's very important for me to be authentic and representative in what I'm doing. That's the most important thing.
Okay, so we just began a debate, as Jonathan said, on what is essentially the topic of my entire life, which is computational creativity. So I'm going to use privilege as chair to unfortunately close this debate, because it is now time to close. I very much regret this. And just to remind us of a thing that Andrew said earlier, which is that computers, as they are currently built, do not feel. And that is a really important thing when we're talking about not only arts, not only music, not only these traditionally creative things, but also when we're talking about our world. And I think that's, for me, that's a really important thing that needs to be said. So I would like at this point to thank very much our speakers. I wish we could have gone on for another hour. I'm sure we could easily fill that time. And also to BOZAR and all of the other organizers of this event, which at least for me has been extraordinarily interesting, and I hope it has for others too. I'm now going to pass back to Emma by way of closing the event.
Thank you, Gering. Thank you so much for moderating this discussion and this hot topic, really. I mean, it's always in the end where you get to the interesting clashes. But thank you everyone for being here and for your insights. And I just want to remind also the audience that because we're in this digital transformation also nowadays in the field of museums and cultural institutions, we've decided to ask the audience to answer a poll, which will appear in a few minutes on your screen, just to know what you thought of this webinar and what are you expecting in terms of digital content in the coming months. And yeah, so thank you everybody for being here today, and thank you to all the speakers for being there. The poll will appear in a minute. Actually, the speakers, you cannot answer the poll, but it's really for the audience, but just so you know.
Will we get to see the answers today, Emma?
Yep. If you all wait a few minutes, we'll leave a few minutes to the audience to answer, and then we can close the poll and see the results.
Can I say one last thing?
Go ahead, Karen. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that we are co-creators of our own reality, and that I really hope that Stefan and Jonathan are happy with the reality that they're heading towards living in, because there's so many potential ones, because I'm very happy with the reality that I'm currently co-creating and excited about that future.
Me too, Karen. And let's talk after the show someday.
Don't know if I want to share my future. I don't know if they're going to hit like this, but yeah, let's see.
It'll be interesting.
Might not be though.
There's a difference between desirable and interesting.
Hey, Jonathan, I don't agree with your, you do not agree.
Okay.
But okay, as Jaeger said, robots, for instance, don't have feelings. So I believe
that's just a philosophical question, because we are not there yet with AI. And I mean with that, the embodiment that we have as beings, of course, has a semantics of how we feel, because it's also related to our being, to our Dasein in a Heideggerian way. And we are from flesh and blood, and we have this wording, how to express ourselves. And of course, robots cannot do that in the same way, because they did not invent the language to do that. But in the future, robots will have their own set of emotions. They will be frustrated as well. And if you look at the true nature of a deep learning network, the loss function is very similar with our emotions. So the foundations are there to have emotions in AI systems.
Okay, so
when does your AI system get stressed, Jonathan?
Well,
does your AI system get angry?
Yes. I sometimes explain my company as a bunch of digital shrinks, psychiatrists, because what we're doing is we're actually manipulating activation functions. And it's just the same way that people take rohypnol or benzodiazepines. It's also a modulation of the activation function. So things are much more similar than people would think. People are still in this if-then-else view of intelligence, and we're way beyond that.
Yeah, but
I agree that it's the same process, because it's neural networks and optimization functions, and so it's based on how we are, and AI and robots will be quicker than we are, and so they will indeed become better. It's only that today indeed the input is limited. The eye of
but it's just a matter of time. And as we are talking about the future and philosophy, it's not the now. I mean, it's like discussing the future of cars when you still have horses and cartridges. You understand? But to me, it looks a little bit like the horseshit problem in Manhattan at the end of the 19th century. People were philosophizing about the future of Manhattan as a huge pile of shit, because of the trams had a lot of horses that they needed. It is, if you are a true visionary, you have to be aware that AI will also evolve.
Yeah.
Okay, so this, as I see, I just want to add quickly, as I see myself as a true visionary, is that I haven't got the luxury of being so abstract and philosophical. I'm focusing on the AI now and how it's being biased, is being integrated into it, and how it's going to directly affect working class people, women, and people of color, and how racism is going to be extended into these systems. So,
but it's
being extended into these systems. There's examples of it now. Say, for example, that the biggest cases of Black men on death row are people that have been wrongly identified. And the first case of an AI wrongly identifying a Black man has happened in Detroit, and he was arrested because it's the same institutionalized racism which is developing these systems. So as nice as it is to think about emotions and AI and will they have it, won't they have it, people's lives are being affected now. And that's my focus now.
But that's not about the technology.
My reality and it's how the technology is being used.
But don't shoot the pianist.
Technology is not inherently good or bad. Don't choose the what?
I mean, the universe is 13 billion years old. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Deep learning is 8 years old. I mean, of course, this technology is misused and is still very premature. But it's more a political thing than a technological thing.
No, I would disagree vehemently that the same people who are developing, who have systems of oppression in law enforcement are developing the same AI. So obviously it's going to be an extension. It's just like obvious basic mathematics. They are the people perpetuating this. They are going to integrate it into technology. That's like, there's so many words you can put on it: lack of awareness, bias, racism. It's everything. It's the system, because the technology is not good or bad. It's just an extension of the system. So this is my reality that there's so many potential realities that we're talking about. And I haven't got time personally to focus on, the emotions of machines, because there's serious shit coming decades before that. But I think they're coming. I don't know. That's it now, of course.
Well, one might suggest that the key problem is that machines do not have emotions. And I take issue with what Jonathan just said about loss functions. And they're absolutely nothing to do with biological emotions at all. Biological emotions are a fundamentally biological thing. You say that, but Well, I think you could keep on saying that, and you can keep on repeating it, but it's still wrong. The point is that you need a fundamentally different kind of technology, which we have no idea how to create, except in the old-fashioned way in the bedroom.
Well, but that's the whole point. It
takes biology to have emotions.
Of course, but it's a silicon era of AI. AI will move away from silicon for obvious reasons, because silicon is slow, hot, it's energy inefficient. But as we will be programming DNA, we will create completely virtual life that will be intelligence, of course. And of course, it's if we're having the discussion right here, right now, with the current state of AI, you're right. But that's not the point, because we have to look in the future within 20, 30 years, and then we can talk again.
But Jonathan, I'd like to give also a thought. We humans are limited in our thinking. Believe we are limited by the creator of this whole thing. We can think in 3 dimensions, space, and then the 4th dimension, which is time. But we cannot think in 5 or 6 or 7 dimensions. And computers can, AI can. So what they will do will be so much further that we will, as humans, not be able to understand and interpret it. So you can say they will be better. And yes, from a robot point of view, they will be better. But for us, they will be worse, because we will have nothing to do with it. We won't understand it. We won't be able to grab it. And that's a bit the point that I wanted to make.
Yes. Okay.
Do we just try to wrap up maybe? And I mean, we've really been over time, even though these discussions are fascinating, of course.
Having a second debate.
And you know what? Maybe we could organize a second event. I mean,
we need to.
Yeah,
another format.
Absolutely. Also, when I see all the reactions of our audience in the chat, really, we know that these subjects are touching so many people that I think we are really going to commit to have as many of these debates as possible in the near future. So please follow us, BOZAR, of course, BOZAR LAB. And thank you everybody for your comments, your questions, for being so reactive. And amazing to have so many people present with us today in these weird times. Thank you very much, and see you soon.